live. I thought I just finished teaching my first class, poetry class. So I thought might as well just continue right here online. Maybe that's how I should brand my YouTube channel: online poetry classes, online free poetry with Shoyish. Um, and I thought it went well. I thought it. I mean, yeah. I was stoked to do it. I was thrilled to do it. I'm very thankful they invited me to do it. I plugged my YouTube page at the end because that was one of the things they told me to do is plug stuff. So I told people in the class that if they liked listening to me prattle on endlessly about and pedantically, then subscribe to my YouTube because I do it at least once a week. So there seemed to be maybe some interest in that. So, well, I also just thought, I'm in the mood. I'm in the mode. It's, like I said, okay, so this class, I'm super stoked to have been invited. The format of the class, so it was 60 minutes, basically, and the format of the class was 20 minutes, me talking about a subject. And, it was open to me whatever I wanted to pitch. I could have taught anything I wanted. And then it was 20 minutes writing session for the people in the class, which, to be honest, this is pretty standard for all the workshops I've been in recently. And then 20 minutes sharing at the end. So, to be honest, like, all I really needed to do was be able to prepare 20 minutes of kind of lecture and then guide. The thing that I was nervous about was, well, I wasn't sure what my prompt was going to be for, like, the writing. And so I wasn't really sure, if anybody was going to want to share, or, how are people going to share for 20 minutes? Was anybody even going to come to this? Was, like, my big concern. Was anybody going to even show up? Because these gigs I've been having recently, like, literally nobody shows up. So it's like, this was $25. I'm like, I don't know if anybody's going to come to this. Ashley didn't even come. She mercifully, well, she gets enough. She gets enough private office hours. So she doesn't. But anyway, so 20 minutes, it's. I wanted to handle it okay. To me, it was like I've been doing this long enough. I know I can spin. There's a lot. I could talk forever. So it's like, what do I want to say in 20 minutes? How do I consolidate it? And to be honest, you kind of had to pitch, like, your whole class. You pitch what you want to teach, and you write, like, a description of what it's going to be. And so my class was New York School, NU, like new metal, New York School of Poetics, because we're reinventing it for the millennial Gen Z NYC. And so it's New York School. And just sort of updating, maybe trying to renovate those poetics, re-examine them, study them. And that was just kind of a funny name for, because I think I saw one of the classes was about, God, what was it about? It had some kind of funny theme or something. So I thought, oh, okay, this will be kind of funny. What was it? It was some kind of Barbie thing or something like that. I don't remember what it was. But I was like, okay, if I spin it like some kind of like tween MTV TRL way, maybe that'll help me. So new metal. And so I thought, but like the class, I suppose, and okay, part of the reason why I'm doing this, and after doing this initial session, is I realized this could be a whole like unit. This could easily be like a 10-week class, or I mean, you could go into any one of these things and teach a class on it. To be honest. You could go into Ted Berrigan and teach a class, or Bernadette Mayer and teach a class, or any of these people. You could teach an entire class about 437 East 12th Street and just do 10 weeks on that. And so there's a lot, is part of the point, is there's a lot to be studied and a lot to learn. And part of the intention of what I would like to teach people and what I don't see at open mics or at readings I go to are these techniques. The thing that I wanted to teach was more stylistic or formal than necessarily anything content wise. Although I suppose it would be that too. But you know, as for like teaching purposes, it's more practical to teach somebody like a technique than to tell them what attitude or how to write about what they want to write about. And so with this, you know, amount of time, I wanted to just consolidate my own, I guess, technique and what I've adapted from New York City poetics that I've studied, particularly the new American poetry confluence of writers that were here in sort of the 40s, 50s, 60s. Black Mountain poets, beat poets, New York school poets, Umbra poets, modernists, all of that which was in the air, street poets. That all is kind of taken into account and kind of bundled up into my technique. And so I guess in a certain way I was trying to teach my technique. Or just, I don't know, like partially explain it or, well, like I said, I'm trying to give people tools for practices that they can use in their own writing processes. So, you know, the first thing I said was get a notebook. Go to, I think I said this. You know, I only had 20 minutes to talk. So, I did make an outline, sort of, and I did go over it like once or twice, which, you know, is rare for me. I do tend to believe that rehearsal can kind of kill something. If you over-rehearse something, I don't know, maybe that's dumb, but with this, I wanted to be sober, and I wanted there to be some kind of, like, spine and skeleton and, like, a feeling that like thought had gone into it rather than just me getting up and like riffing for 20 minutes about whatever I want to talk about. Like there was a focus and I wanted there to be practical applications, things that people could take away from it and use just like tools. Whether or not they want to use it or not, I just want to give people, because that's what I find in New York school and New York artists, a lot of experimentation and just trying different approaches for things. And so, you know, I didn't even get to my Kerouac story about the painting. There's a lot that I didn't get to say that I had kind of rehearsed, but for me, it was more just about steering it between the navigational buoys. I didn't want to go way off course and just start. Plus, I was nervous, and like once you get in front of people, that's when it can be like, okay, you know, particularly if I was high, oh, it could have just spiraled way out of control. I could have it could have been like this. You know, I could have lost the flooring. I could have just I could have been really self-conscious and self-doubting, and the whole thing just could have collapsed. So my main goal was to just not have that happen and just, you know, get it so people would feel comfortable sharing and so we could get through that too. I wanted to, you know, okay, so going into it, I do want to mention this because going into it, when I sent them my pitch, the title was The New York School in you, and then it was something about diary poetics or something. It was like the hyphen caption or whatever. And so when they made the graphic for Instagram or whatever, it said Diary Poetics with Matt Proctor. And they did use the description that I had sent them, you know, which was nice of them. The description of the class. But the thing is, I think you maybe even had to click well, in any case, to see the description, but I kind of prepared a class that was more about quote unquote diary poetics because that's what I thought that was like an edit that they were making. I thought they were kind of saying, well, we don't really want you. I don't know about this. They didn't use my New York school pun. You know, I guess it was not funny, but so they called it diary. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to get people in this class that are signed up to learn like how to write diary poetics. So I better like teach to that. And so I was kind of trying to do both, where I was like talking about how these New York writers adapted a sort of personal immediacy to their environment and their lives. People like Frank O'Hara and the second, third generation, whatever, New York school poets. That feels very contemporary to me. Partially, I feel like I'm trying to teach a poetics and a curriculum and a canon, I guess, sort of. That's an alternative to what you'd probably learn in, you know, any regular college, I would say, except maybe Naropa or something, some kind of hippie San Francisco State, or, you know, there's probably a few colleges that are teaching this stuff, but most, I mean, Columbia University has got Mary Oliver on the door, you know, like, I'm sure there, but, so a lot of this technique is about kind of loosening those constraints and loosening the policies of the poetry status quo. The new American poetry that happened in the 50s, I do think was kind of an undressing of the poetry from these kind of British and European kind of shackles and cliches and forms. And so I'm trying to teach kind of a starting off point from there of a new way of looking about form and structure. Uh, that a lot of people don't know about, even though it should be kind of the tradition or something. You know, you're more likely to learn. I don't even know what the fuck they're teaching. What's a content? I don't know. But this so you know, I was trying to teach a class that was like a little more about style than, but then so I thought it was about diary poetics. So I'm like, okay, well, how do I you know address that, and are people going to be coming into it thinking we have to write you know they want to write something, which is fine if they want to write something super personal, um but it just feels a little bit more something like you can objectively impart to somebody, like options about technique, approaches to writing, experiments about writing, like, you know, carrying a pocket notebook, having the size of the page, whatever. And so anyway, like I thought I thought it went well. We got good feedback. People seem to be happy. I thought some good writing came out of it. To be honest, I was impressed with everybody's uh, workshop samples, like a lot actually. So that's one thing that I learned in the two workshops that I was in this year with Eddie and Philip, is they both gave a lot of they both devoted a good amount of the workshop every week to just writing, which, you know, for me, that was kind of frustrating because I have all the time in the world to write, really. You know, I could write all day, every day if I had any discipline, but I have a pocket notebook in a life instead. And so anyway, and a drug habit. And so anyway, and a creative approach. Um, and so, but, you know, not a lot of people do have that. And I do think it is a little bit of a different circumstance when you're with people writing, and especially after you've just been taught something, all of that, you know, kind of lecture, all of those ideas are probably still fresh in your head. So I didn't, you know, like I said, I didn't go into it with a prompt necessarily. And as I was thinking about the class today, I was like, what am I going to have people do? Because I'm kind of trying to teach this technique that is very like site specific and like about outside stimulation. And then we're going to be in the workshop, and there isn't going to be any outside stimulation. You know, there's not going to be any conversations to overhear, or, you know, interference from kind of the cityscape or advertisements or whatever. And so what was I going to have people write about, you know? Um, you know, part of the technique, I guess it's unfair to try to like force other writers to have your technique. um, and I do appreciate everybody's writing. Like I do feel like the the things that were read in the class were definitely not imitations of my technique at all, which was good. It just felt like people were writing in their own voices and with their own power and their own ideas. But it was also like, you know, I do want to throw just a lot of just pragmatic approaches that they can take about uh, how to generate material. And so, like there's this Bill. One of the things I mentioned in the class is this Bill Kushner thing about he would go on a walk, take his notebook with him, and every block he would write a line. You know, he'd give himself the entire block to write a line. See, when I took workshops, that was the kind of stuff that I found useful. Just kind of tips, little aphorisms. Just like, I mean, I'd like to get more into the workshop part and like developing my approach to that. I mean, if I were to do it again, one thing I would definitely do is I'd have everybody read everything twice. I think you have to hear something at least twice to like really hear to really be able to critique it. It's only fair to hear it twice. So that's something I would do in a future workshop is have everybody read what they read twice. And to be honest, you really should have a paper version of it in front of you. It's not really fair to critique something unless you have a page of what it looks like in front of you as well, which we didn't have because we were on Zoom, and it was, you know, it's just people sharing stuff they'd written in a workshop. But to be honest, for stuff that was written in a workshop, I thought it was very good. I thought it was very high quality. It wasn't just like a bunch of like word vomit or like, you know, it wasn't just diary kind of like entry stuff. It all had shape. It all had really nice music, but it was actually all very finished. It felt like, you know, I do think people should be able to write a poem from start to finish in one sitting and have it, you know, like if you listen to these fucking songwriters, Bob Dylan or Neil Young, how long did it take you to write that song? They're like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's like, yeah, that's how long a poem should take, you know, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You should be able to kind of just like, or, you know, that's part of what the material, right? The idea that Frank O'Hara or the New York way of doing things is just dashing it off and making it look like you worked all night on it or something. And just being smart enough to be able to do that. Being smart enough and talented enough to be able to do that. And also doing speed. That's something I didn't talk about in the class. Is you need to do lots of speed when you're writing, all right? Everybody, this is you know, the professor. All right, we cut the shit here, okay? I'm going to give it to you for real, okay? You got to do speed. You got to experiment, okay? You got to get out there. You got to have sex with other poets. You got to do readings. So, yeah, I mean, I was just trying to not massively have it go off the rails or something. And it felt like, you know, it was... And ideally to just get people, you know, and give them 6 or 7 or 8 different things to take away from it immediately that can go into their toolkit and they can just use whether they want to or not. You know, let me just throw ideas out there that maybe they haven't thought about approaches to composition, you know, that I don't see out there when I'm hearing poets, when I'm at readings or reading other people's stuff. I think there should be more flexibility in the work. There should be more casualness, more slang, you know, more contemporary. You know, that's why I'm always saying Riz and shit like that. Brand names, that's something we talked about in the workshop. But these are also hallmarks of New York, you know. So it's like, oh God, how am I gonna talk about this for 2 hours? Hold on, let me get my lighter. I'll be right back. Uh, yeah, I mean, I it was amazing what people came up with in 20 minutes. Actually, when they were free writing in the class, like I was kind of stunned at how like uh, they could have read it at a reading. Really, I mean, that was loaded. It was like in Eddie's class when Philip wrote that thing about the New York School martini shake or whatever it was about whatever that poem is about 9/11 or whatever. He wrote that in the workshop, and it was like that'll probably go in his book or something. Poetry should have more of an approach like that, where it's like it's almost just like a note that you wrote to somebody. Like it doesn't necessarily have to have this worked over kind of finality and all this uh, hours and hours and hours of considering every little. I mean, there's something to be said for ease. It's sleep in poetry, right? Like Keats said. Laziness. This is why we get into poetry, because it's easy. But it's also not easy. I mean, you're trying to trick yourself into like a passageway into like the ultimate profundities, into surprising yourself with that stuff. So surprising yourself with like the truth. I didn't know that I thought that, or I didn't know, you're trying to think like the most profound shit you can think. I do think that like I didn't really get across. I think it would take a long time to get across the ideas about composition, maybe that I'm not that I'm trying I would want anybody to like imitate me or something. It is kind of frustrating to me how slow a lot of modern writing can be, and concentrated and focused. I think that that's all good for the people that can do that. If you can be Alex Dimitrov, then why wouldn't you want to be in Oprah's fucking magazine or whatever? But I don't know. The modern world seems more schizophrenic, confused, distracted, jump cuts, split second, everything happens fast, everything's connected, everything's happening all at once. We're so over mediated. There's so much. I don't know. I said a lot of things where I was like, this is wild, because I'm supposed to talk for 20 minutes. I didn't have PowerPoint bullet points or anything prepared. Maybe I should have, but that's what I loved about it, is like, that's my idea. This is my college, to be honest. This is what I would do in college. If in a perfect world, I would just get paid like $250,000 a year to like smoke pot and like pontificate in front of young people and like try to influence their poetry. I wouldn't want to teach like in some academic nightmare where they give me like a syllabus or there's tons of like red tape. I'm a loose cannon, okay? I'm like Murtaugh or whatever. I'm Riggs. But like, I was really vibing with what Tova was saying about Poetry Society of New York and how their approach to doing things, and like I think their programming has been really exciting. These workshops and stuff they're doing, and the ways they're like expanding their events and stuff that's happening thing they're doing, like in addition to it's cool to see them kind of expand their platform outside of like the New York Poetry Festival and stuff, which is an amazing thing. But it's nice of them to invite me to do this because I don't even have an MFA. When Brooklyn Poets started to have like young teachers who were not necessarily teaching adjuncts or whatever, it was all people who had super high pedigree. It was all people that like had MFAs from Sarah Lawrence or whatever the fuck. That's right. People are leaving because I'm talking about the MFA thing. And so it's nice that they just kind of gave me a 20 minutes to just spiel about my own propaganda about how poetry should be. Well, I was really just trying to throw out a lot of information, names, approaches, techniques that maybe people are not going to get in any other way. You know, they're not going to get this maybe in their regular college. They're probably not going to get it in any other like online workshop they're going to take. You know, what class would I want to take? So let me just talk about the work that I love and that influences me and sort of try to explain my technique, which is where the diary poetics thing comes in. And how that's kind of a reaction to modern life or whatever. Oh, thank God, now nobody's watching. It's too much pressure when people watch. Maybe I should just pre-tape this shit. I mean, I don't even have a chat. One of the things I didn't get across, although I did talk about the relationship between the poets and the painters, was like abstraction and figuration. You know, I think people are like reluctant to utilize abstraction, or there's not, I don't see a lot of abstraction in people's poetry now. And I think it's just an option. It's just someplace you can go. You know, it doesn't hurt to have passages of abstraction that are just pure language or music or, you know, the way it looks or just language that chemically reacts with itself and with other words. I think people should be experimenting and have a chemistry of the word choices they're making. And that, and especially in a workshop, especially in as a part of your own practice, why not play with that and write to that and think about that? You know, so I don't know. This is something I've also noticed with, like, I don't know, just hearing about Ashley's experience at the MFA program is like, it doesn't seem like they even talk about style. It seems like it's all about plot or just like, I don't even know, fixing people's fucking grammar or something. And I don't know. I just think people aren't being fed interesting stuff about what is possible. So I wanted to kind of posit, you know, a little bit of an alternate miniature syllabus or canon or whatever about here's things you can look at that you know, because the beauty of the New York school and sort of diary poetry is that anybody can do it. You know, you can write an I do this, I do that poem. You just go do something and then you come home and write it down. So yeah, ideally my YouTube page would be like an online university of poetry, like Pen Sound or Kelly's Writer's House. They have an unbelievable video setup, to be honest. Kelly's Writer's House, like, to be honest, they probably have the most comprehensive like poetry video output of anywhere in the country. They have multi-camera in their fucking, like, you know, where they do their readings and shit. They like film their fucking classes and put them on YouTube. It's like we're gonna get 6 students talking about this Wallace Stevens poem and fucking put it on YouTube. Okay. So I don't know. One thing I want to do maybe with my YouTube page is start to film other events, other readings, and just other bands, other gigs, and just make it like a venue for to see work online. Doesn't just necessarily have to be, the open. Um, it's like anytime you're doing something for the first time, you kind of like, like driving for the first time or something, you kind of just like, or, the first time I ever waited tables or whatever, it's like, you kind of have to or the first time I ever DJ'd a wedding, it's like you don't want to let the people know it's the first time you've ever done it. First time I ever taught a class, it's like, well, I'm a pedantic person. Those who can't do, teach. I definitely don't know how to do anything, but I can explain to other people how to do it. I definitely have a lot of information, and I'm definitely like, I love telling people what they're doing wrong and how they should do it. So I don't know. Maybe this could be, well, apparently, like, okay, Pluto is entering Aquarius on January 20th. That's in 2 days. So that's going to be a big thing, right? So it's a beginning of a new thing. Who knows what that's going to be? So I don't know. I would like to, I do have a lot of information about this stuff. So it's like, we could talk at length about, any one of these fucking books. And it was like, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. You kind of want people to draw their own conclusions. I didn't necessarily want to make it all about giving my secrets away or like, this is what I do. But in all of my reading, these are books that I was attracted to and like thought were kind of, they had some, part of what I do when I'm looking at poets or reading poetry books or at the bookstore or whatever is like, you're looking for stuff you can use. You're looking for technique. You're looking for a poet who has kind of a piece of the puzzle, or that's the next thing that's going to show you some new trick that you can kind of imitate or something. So like this book, I got this during the pandemic. All of Jack Kerouac's books are kind of different degrees of experimentation. And so, something like Old Angel Midnight or even Book of Blues or Mexico City Blues are different than this book, which is a little more objective. Book of Sketches. Book of Blues is a little bit more this kind of boozy, kind of bar room. He's blowing, his common kind of man thing. Mexico City Blues is a little bit of a different thing where it's this kind of peyote, heroin, holy shrine kind of thing. Mushroom. Uh, it's kind of mystical. This, Old Angel Midnight is like this kind of sonic, just pushing it to the absolute limit, hearing the cosmos, hearing everything. This book is a little more objective. I would recommend this to people. This is like his notebook book. Even though Book of Blues is a notebook book, this is the one that's like really like, he's sketching what he sees. It's kind of his closest thing to just like, I don't know, concrete William Carlos Williams. But it's like, okay, so this is something I've neglected to mention in class, is that I meant to, is like, Jack Kerouac learned this from some painter that he knew. I don't know who it was, but the painter told him basically to just go out and write in the real world. Go out into the world and describe what is around you as you're out there. Get a pocket notebooks. This painter would go out, with one sketchbook or whatever. And so he recommended this to Jack Kerouac. Get a pocket notebook and just go out into the world and write what you see, write what you hear. And so that's kind of what Book of Sketches is. You know, it's a little bit more literal, figurative. It isn't, but it's, you know, he makes this music of it in his sense of, Jack Kerouac doesn't really get any credit as a poet, but he had a highly subtle sense of form and how he was tying things together. And when you read this stuff, you see this book especially, I don't really, because this just came out like a few years ago. This was not released during his lifetime. It was something he had like as a manuscript. And it came out, let's see, 2006. You know, this was never published until 2006. And to me, it's kind of a crucial, because it's a much more kind of coherent, disciplined, maybe you might say. I think this was a little earlier, maybe. This was when he first kind of developed that technique. That was something I meant to talk about in the class. But, you know, that's why the class is not necessarily just a New York school. Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, Frank O'Hara, Leroy Jones, Diane DePrima, Joel Oppenheimer, all these people, Paul Blackburn, John Ashbery, Kenneth Koch, fucking Taylor Mead, Jack Michelin, they're all kind of hanging out. You know, Bob Kaufman, they're all kind of hanging out in the same, you know, these different schools where you say these guys are New York school, these guys are beat. You know, it was pretty normal for Frank O'Hara and Allen Ginsberg they were friends. They would do readings together, and their work is not necessarily that dissimilar either in a lot of ways. It's kind of cosmopolitan. It's influenced by William Carlos Williams, and they have different, you know, movements and strengths and weaknesses and things that they do or whatever, but you know, to me that's kind of an essential thing, this way that Jack Kerouac had of going through the world, writing things as they happened. I think you see this more, like I read this Bill Kushner poem, right, where he's like, you know, very much in the action. And so, you know, you're drawing things from everything you're reading, and there's certain things that you read that you need what they have, and so they call out to you. There's something about their style, there's something about the flow of it, the voice of it, the pace of it. And so this is all stuff that I've more or less compiled into my technique, but I also think that it's like there are connections here, and this is sort of an ulterior canon or something. To me, if you want to talk about autofiction, you know, or even the closeness between poetry and prose now, right? Like Ben Lerner, right, kind of does both. And Eileen Myles does both. You know, what's the difference? I don't know. John Wieners does both. Philip Whalen has novels. Apparently they're good. But also, well, that's a whole other fucking, I mean, so this is like literally a diary piece, but this was one of my favorite books during the pandemic, because I don't know what it is about the diary, because these are basically poems, really. If you look at them, they're really poems, but I don't know if it's looser, but the lines are longer. His sense of the page is really beautiful. You know, John Wieners doesn't typically do this in his poetry. His poetry is usually kind of very thin, narrow, you know, not that many words a line. This is not prose, but it has kind of an expanse-like prose, and it uses like maybe the same page that a prose would use, but it also has the kind of density and beauty of like poetry, and the thought and the consideration, kind of unusualness of poetry. And so this is why I was super inspired by this. It was published as, you know, a so-called journals book, and they are journals, but to me this is maybe the best poetry. It's not as distilled maybe as the John Wiener's, selected poem stuff, but like I don't think it makes it any less valid. It's kind of nice that there's this alternate mode of work created by the same mind, the same brain, the same poetic kind of source, but it has maybe an improvisationalness or like a looseness or like a push to it. There's an expanse to it. It's still very, very considered, and it is poetry. But I think even form wise, I think this is formally maybe more interesting than the way a lot of John Wiener's poetry looks on the page. And for me, this is kind of, I don't know. I want my stuff to feel like this. I want to learn from this. If you're talking about how to write in a long line, he's able to get a lot of variety, a lot of, and you usually John Wiener's is very reserved and he chooses his words very carefully. And this is somebody with that same facility and that same elegance who's allowing themselves to push a little more. And I think it's just as good and might even maybe even the best stuff. Actually, it's probably my favorite because you can just one of the things about a book like this is you can go really anywhere into it and fish the poetry out that you need. You know, this is where I'm different maybe than a lot of people, and I'm like way less disciplined. Is I'm not necessarily a linear reader, not anymore. Now I just basically graze the page and I just sort of sift through it and I find the stuff that I need. I'd like to be able to read stuff from start to finish, and you could definitely read this from start to finish. But to me, it's more like, there's certain passages in here that I really need. And there is some sense that you like kind of divine them. They kind of come to you. You find where they are and you read them. But it's also just about the totality of how he's using the page, putting what he is putting on the page, and the expanse of it and the arena of it. And so, to be honest, just sort of sifting through the book is not a bad way to sort of take all that in. I kind of like poetry. This is a book I should have talked about, even though it's not necessarily a diary piece. Flowchart. This is a book that's kind of, it's a little bit more, tight. It's not as wild, which is why I probably prefer this. Even though this is like a kind of ultimate mega. This is like the Niagara Falls of like hydroelectric power poetry. And because it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. I mean, it just pushes. It's so mighty and so voluminous. It's just like, that's what's inspiring about this. It's just like you can go in anywhere and you just feel like you are just lost in this endless forest. And, I think when people are thinking about diary writing, I think they should think in that way. How can you write some kind of endless, kind of somnambulistic, kind of speaking in tongues, kind of gibberish, it's it's almost like Proust or something. It's almost like a prose, and it's just like sheer mass of what it is. Poems are not typically that heavy and that huge. Poem is typically kind of a half page or a quarter page, maybe 1 page. It's 2 to 3 minutes, okay? That's how long a poem is. It's 2 drink minimum. That's how long a poem is. Okay? We all know how long a poem is, okay? It's 2 to 3 minutes, but ideally less than 2. Just like pop music. But, well, that's like the structure that we're all kind of like straitjacketed into as open mic poets. You get maybe at best 5 minutes. But then maybe you become a feature, you get 10 minutes or 12 minutes or 15 minutes. So then you get to maybe think a little bit more. I wish people did longer readings. I would love to see somebody read for an hour or 2 hours, actually. I'd love to see people read for 2 hours. I think you get this little peephole into what people do. And that's what that's what's exciting about like this John Wiener's book, for instance. They never would have published this during his lifetime because they would have been like, oh, it's just notebooks. Who was going to publish this? We need the poetry, John. You know, we need the best of the best stuff. And it's like, well, you know, sometimes it's nice to just like be in the ambiance, to have something immersive, to have something environmental, you know, with my endless kind of like diary, video, live stream, diatribe, poetry. Like, it's meant to just be endless. You know, like I make my vlogs like endlessly long so you'll never run out. You know, like long after I'm gone, there will be so much of my life that it'll feel like, you know, you can watch like a lot of my life on video. Hopefully. Hopefully YouTube never goes down. Hopefully YouTube servers never go down. But you know, you just want it to be endless. You want it to be overwhelmingly. There's quality to quantity, okay? There's a quality to quantity. That's my quote of the year. Quantity has its own quality. I heard that a couple times recently. That's quote of the year. That's my inspirational quote of the year. Quantity has its own quality. That's what I'm banking on. It ain't about quality. It's about quantity quality. Quantity, yeah. So, I don't know. I like being able to go in anywhere and just sort of watch a little bit and take a piece off, like a hunk of cheese, and scurry away. You know, like my vlogs. Just put the Scenes from a Life playlist on shuffle. And just, whenever you're bored, just click to the next one. And it'll just randomly throw you into different points of my life. Like being John Malkovich. And did being John Malkovich predict vlogs? I don't know. Or headset, or point of view, POV. GoPro. Did being John Malkovich predict GoPro? Was that just a GoPro the whole time? They just GoPro John Malkovich? Because that's what it's basically like. Yeah, this was a book I talked about in the class. This is honestly one of my favorite. This was probably my favorite book I read during the pandemic. And if you read a lot of my poems, basically I'm just trying to imitate this. I don't know, because there's so much interesting language in this, and it tells the story in the most interesting way possible. It doesn't tell you anything in a conventional way. It feeds you every step of the way with interesting, but you get it. You know, you're getting it in kind of this aleatory, cubistic, kind of fragmented, you know, mosaic. Maybe mosaic is what I should talk about. It does feel like, you know, people should think about their poetry as a mosaic more. Every little word is like a bead, you know. Every little slot, every subject and predicate is like a different fragment in the mosaic. And I think that this book really has a brilliant, genius sense of form and structure and beauty. I mean, it's just all there. This is as good as it gets, really. I mean, fuck Columbia University. I mean, this is what they should be teaching at Columbia University, right here. Because this is, to me, this is what, I mean, not to prescribe it, but, okay, if there's going to be a standard, you know, if there's going to be a standard that's like, this is the grammar, and this is the fucking punctuation that we use, this is where people should be thinking. You know, this is what people should be reading about. This, to me, is a more realistic, contemporary, genius version of what the world looks like, what consciousness feels like, what a sonnet would look like today is this. You know, this is what a haiku, a sonnet, you know, a chorus, you know, this is what, you know, it has all of that, and it's totally brilliant, and it's totally endlessly, you know, it's inexhaustible, right? Because it's not totally literal. There remains this kind of enigmatic riddle to the language. that like makes it endlessly kind of stimulating, inspiring. You can always get new meanings out of this. You can always, it's always fun. You can always interpret it in new. The tree weeps, languid, long. It's just like, I don't know. It's all there. So that was I don't know, but it's only like a diary. This isn't necessarily, I don't remember, I think I read an interview or something at some point about how this book was made. That's the thing about a lot of these alternative poetry. A lot of it is about the technique of how they did it, and there's always some mystery that, like, I don't know if this was written in a every day, one poem a day. um Okay, it looks like it's a collection of a bunch of different chapbooks. But they all definitely feel like they share kind of a form. And they're like a serial poem almost. It is almost like a sequence because they're all one page. Like I said, they're kind of like what a contemporary sonnet should probably look like. But it's, nowhere on that thing does it claim that it's sonnets. That's my own. I mean, one of the big, if you're going to talk about diary poetics, and, I guess what I do is, like, you definitely have to talk about Joanne Kiger. Even though Joanne Kiger is not necessarily a New York school poet, I think that Joanne Kiger did live in New York for a short period of time, I think in like 1966, or maybe it was 66 or like 68. So there was a short period of time, but important, like I'm sure there was. That's kind of what was cool about that era and why they should be teaching it, because there are interesting kind of linkages and cross pollination. So, Joanne Kiger, I think, was married to Gary Snyder. They were definitely like an item. I'm pretty sure they were married. They went to Japan together. She was like a protege, of Gary Snyder. And so you can see that influence. You can see the Japanese influence. They went there. The influence of that writing. She spent a lot of time with Philip Whalen. She's from the Bay Area. She's like a San Francisco Renaissance figure. But she also spent this formative period in New York, like I said, for like a little while anyway, where she met people like Larry Fagan, so there was she could influence what they were doing. They could influence what she was doing. She lived in Bolinas. A lot of those poets from New York went to Bolinas, and visit Louis Warsh. He and Joanne Kiger, I think, were, a thing at a certain point. They all fucked each other. That's how poetry works, okay? Everybody fucks everybody, okay? It has to be that way. That's why it's poetry. Because everybody fucks everybody. I mean, I didn't say that in the class. I wouldn't necessarily. That's only for YouTube. That's only for my OnlyFans. The real poetry lectures are my OnlyFans, okay? Subscribe to my OnlyFans if you want the real fucking poetry lesson, okay? That's where we'll really learn about poetry. Subscribe to Daddy's OnlyFans, okay? So anyway, Joanne Kiger, there, as far as dailiness and kind of a light touch and just like providing the biggest expanse of like poetic effect with like, the sparsest amount of words and lines. And there's a lot of, it does feel like Pacific and the kind of like mistiness of it and the kind of like the big hills and the, there's big spaces on the page, and there's those kind of contours and those kind of like S curves and stuff. That's very like Pacific. But there's also a New York school kind of like, I do this, I do that, and marking down what's actually happening and doing it inside of a sort of a colloquial, contemporary, kind of youthful way of speaking rather than trying to imitate. But, okay, so one of the things, okay, if you look at Gary Snyder, he has these things to do poems, right? This is something I didn't talk about in the workshop. Things to do in Portland. And I'm not exactly sure if he invented this form, but the only, he's the only person I've seen do it before Ted Berrigan or other people who have done this. Because Ted Berrigan has famous poems, Things to Do in New York City, Things to Do in Providence, I think. He has a bunch of Things to Do poems. And I think he got it from Gary Snyder. Gary Snyder, I guess, it's basically just a list poem, you know? He wanted something to write about. He's in Portland, so things to do in Portland. And it's just a bunch of shit that he's done and things that you can do. Ted Berrigan's list is kind of more of like a joke and kind of a pastiche, I guess, but you know, there is a bi-coastal kind of cross transference of ideas. And so when you're talking about New York School and these writers, you know, New York School writers, beat writers, Black Mountain writers, in a certain way, you can't talk about that stuff without talking about San Francisco. And they are almost like parallel scenes and parallel cities in a lot of ways. There are differences in a lot of the San Francisco poetry that I see. That's why I don't necessarily bring it into a conversation about what I want to talk about in the class, you know, because there is a different style, I think, that happens or happened in New York. It's definitely markedly different than anything that happened in San Francisco. And that's sort of what I'm trying to pimp on people, you know, like I just want to share it with people, you know, because it's like, I feel like it's something people should be thinking about or considering in the surface of their poetry. I don't know what people think about when they're sitting down to write a poem. They're probably not, I mean, me, I guess I am more of like a mimic, where I'm like, I'm a vampire stylistically, where I'm trying to, like, I read so I can find things to imitate, to, you know, to add to what I'm doing. Maybe other people don't need that, or they just have their kind of own inner cadence and things. But I am kind of like a shuffle culture hipster, just like media nerd. You know, I grew up, my favorite store was Media Play, music, books, movies. And so I'm obsessed with art, and that's where I live. And, you know, books are sort of like the, oh my God, I was watching, it was this video on TikTok of Jeff Bezos, and they were talking to him when he started Amazon. They didn't know who he was. It was an interview they did with him. They're like, who's this guy? Who are you? What's your claim to fame? And he's like, I'm Jeff Bezos. I started this website. And he's like, he started it because he worked at a quantitative hedge fund on Wall Street in New York. You know, he worked at private equity. And he saw that the internet was like growing. I forget how much he said, but like 250,000% a year. So it was something ridiculous. And so he's like, so I thought I'd get into that. And he said he chose books because there are more inventory. There's more single items of books than anything else. You know, there are more products. There's more individual books as a product than anything else. Music being kind of second. CDs. Which I thought, that's kind of interesting, actually. You know, and true. Like, it is kind of utilitarian and cheap enough that they can manufacture a lot of them. And it's kind of retains its non-commercial. This is why I encourage people to self-publish. Because there's nothing wrong with it. You know, they want to discourage people from empowering themselves and taking their own destiny in their own hands. There's nothing wrong with self-publishing. That's the beauty of the democracy of literature. But I thought that was also kind of interesting, just kind of from a product standpoint. Because it was kind of an odd question, like, why did Amazon start with books? I always wondered that. Like, it's the biggest company in the world, and yet it started as a fucking bookstore. How can that be possible? You know, that's not... I can't think of any other bookstore that became the biggest fucking company ever, you know, that took over everybody's lives. But I think that's kind of interesting. I don't know what that means, but I think it's hopeful. I think that's definitely positive, you know, and let's maintain that, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, a big part of one of my favorite things when I've been to workshops, and my own, I've been to enough poetry workshops, acting workshops. I went to college. You know, I did go to college. I did graduate. Okay, I did graduate. I have 2 BAs. I have the fucking diplomas. Okay, someplace they're around. I think they're in my ottoman. I have my fucking diplomas. Okay, I have college degrees. Okay, I don't have master's degrees. I'm not a grand master. Okay, I'm not a grand master of the fine arts. I'm just a bachelor. Hey, I'd rather stay a bachelor, all right? I'm enjoying the bachelor life. I love being a bachelor of the arts. I don't necessarily be a master. I wouldn't make such an arrogant claim. I'm 23. I'm a master. I'm 23 years old. I've got an MFA. I'm a goddamn master. You will refer to me as such. I'm a goddamn grand wizard of the arts. I'm an international grand master of the arts. I paid $100,000 for the right to say that. No, so I loved everything about this. I loved that it was like not institutional and they just let me they didn't dictate what I did at all. I got to pitch it, I got to do it. It was nice. They so originally they sent me all these dates. There were all these dates until like June, July, and I was just like, you know what, let's just do it. Let me just do this now. It's winter time. People are gonna be indoors. Like so I got paid a good rate. I don't know. I'd continue to do this if people wanted me to do poetry workshops. Well, that's one of the worst things about not having my apartment is I was just getting rolling with being able to have people over and shit. I definitely would have done a poetry workshop. I would have a weekly fucking poetry workshop in my apartment. That's one of the worst fucking things. It's like that apartment could have been a huge resource for New York City poetry. I could have had people over. I could have showed people my books, taught people from my books, just showed them possibilities. I could have filmed it, put it on the internet. Uh, you know, Now I'm in Siberia. It's nice and everything, but it's like I'm not necessarily gonna have a fucking weekly poetry workshop. I could, I suppose, if people want to come to Midwood and learn about poetry. We could do it online, but to me, like the open mic is like sort of a workshop of sorts. But it's nice to be able to use, whatever knowledge I have about this subject, even if, maybe I'm not the most likable, publishable person, I do have studied it like a nerd extensively. And I do have like this, verbal compulsion to just talk endlessly, which is sort of what teaching is about, or I don't know. So I don't know. I'd like to do it more. It'd be cool to do it more. I'd do that more. Um, yeah, like I said, it's just like it's nice to be able to use some of the freaking. Well, it also encourages me to, I haven't had the most fucking positive relationship with my. I haven't even really looked at them. My books were in storage when I moved out in March. They were in storage until fucking October. So it's like I barely had them. And to be honest, I just have all this animosity toward literature that I haven't really, I did kind of just I just kind of stopped acquiring new stuff like a few years ago and really, I look at what I need to look at and I draw for the past couple of years the importance has been drawing about inspiration from real life. Now it's like I listen to poetry at the open mic. I go to open mics. I'm at Poetry Project filming stuff. I filmed that thing at Poet's house. I've been doing these art lectures. That's all like me. That's all me trying to feed like my sense of what's out there and what the intellectual life of this country and this city are, pulsating with. I want to be there. You know, I mean, seeing stuff at Poetry Project, being at the marathon, I would recommend to anybody. You know, if people have not been to the New Year's Day marathon, you know, the part of the shame of it is there's no Village Voice. I was thinking about this today. When I first moved to New York, there was still the Village Voice, which was this unbelievable, amazing newspaper. You know, they'd write serious articles, serious reviews, and it gave you, you know, a common, physicalized uh, guide to what was going on. You know, you could see what was going on in the theater, see what was going on in music. So you'd see, oh, the Poetry Project New Year's Day Marathon. Yeah, of course, bam. I'll go to that. You know, that's probably how I found it. I don't remember how I found out about it when I first moved to New York, but that's probably how I found out about it. I imagine. I don't know how else I would have found out about it. Now it's like I don't know how people find out about it, but I imagine a lot of people don't even know about it. But it's not a bad way to just completely survey and take in like what's out there. You know, it's an amazing artistic achievement every year. You know, so it's an honor to be in that chain, you know. It's an extreme honor. Everybody who participates knows that it's an extreme honor to be a part of that chain, you know, in that life. And so uh that's a great way to just sample and just see. It's like the ultimate open mic. It's like the, you know, it's like the A list. It's like the Met Gala of open mics. You know, it's the SNL 45th anniversary of open mics. You know, I would say, I know this is a corny analogy, but to me, Poetry Project, I guess, would be like the Saturday Night Live of poetry. Maybe, I don't know. It's like the Second City of poetry, definitely. You know, it's like that's, I don't know, maybe just in my nerdy head, but it's like, it's, to me, all the poets that I like reading, and I really admire what they do. You know, that's why I'm trying to impart sort of this style, and why I was trying to lead with style and a sort of a formalistic approach, is because that is the common linkage I see with a lot of these writers that I like. Is like they read at Poetry Project, or they taught at Poetry Project, or, you know, they studied with this person, or, you know, they were reading this person. You know, when I go to other cities, there's definitely writers that I like, but their flavor is a little bit, you know, this way or that way. You know, like there's writers everywhere that I like, but the New York writers, I don't know. This is the center of the propaganda and the branding. This is where they really perfected, you know, at least 20th century kind of advertising and branding, packaging, cereal boxes. Put a toy in the cereal box. You know, the New York school, like, that's New York school poetry. Put a toy in the fucking cereal box. That is fucking Ron Padgett. That's Ted Berrigan. It's Brillo boxes. It's, you know, they were part of the factory. They were hanging out at the factory. There's screen tests. Look at it. You know, Warhol did covers for C magazine. So I don't know. This was another book I talked about. This book, literally, I was trying to be, I don't know. I was trying to pull in, as a teacher, I was trying to just pull in stuff that might speak to this subject in every which way, and maybe not necessarily even stuff that I would, the cliches or the normal stuff that you would draw on. Like something like this. This is a tyrant book, you know, which is like a kind of a, you know, an alt-lit, kind of internet cool. And it's a, you know, this is a good book, definitely. It's well written, and but it's also, it's a lot like a diary, and there is like a poetic form to this, I would say. It's like tweets. Everything is like a fucking length of a tweet, and there's spaces between everything. And it's super confessional. It's super talking about Hillary Duff, slangy, sexual. You know, it's talking about her dad and shit. It's like, but it's like, you know, this isn't necessarily related to the New York school or anything per se. It's just like if you're thinking about diary writing, diary poetry, and to me, this book not terribly, it's sort of in the same, league or something, the same kind of like approach as the John Wiener's book. But it's also like that might resonate with somebody and hit something with somebody that you don't know. You don't just want to bring. Oh well, when I was thinking about what to present, I was like, is anybody finding it? I was like, why don't I teach a step away from them and personal poem and all the shit that people always teach, right? Like if you're gonna teach like the New York school diary, I do this, I do that poem, it's like of course you're gonna fucking teach a step away from them. Everybody, they always teach the day lady died, or all Mal Waldron, whatever the fuck, they always teach the same fucking poems, to the harbor master. And so I was like, well, let me, this is my opportunity to just share something like that, something that no one has ever fucking heard of before. Like let me just let they, because you don't know what people's perspective is, and you'd be surprised. You might be opening a whole new fucking world to somebody just by saying Bill Kushner or something. They may be like, they don't, odds are probably they never heard of that person. That might open a door into a whole other fucking thing that they might not find it. I know it took me a long time to find that fucking door. Okay, it took me a long time to find the Bill Kushner door. I didn't find the Bill Kushner door till like 2016 or 17. So, it's something that if I mention it now, it might just be like a feint, like, okay, well, that makes sense. But like, if people pull that thread, it could maybe open up a whole new fucking thing. So I read this poem that Bill Kushner wrote that it felt kind of exemplified everything that I was talking, that I wanted to kind of put across to people, but also was like, he's queer, and it's gonna do it in like one poem. It's something they've never heard before, probably chances are, but it's good. I think Bill Kushner is like one of the best kept secrets or something, and like people should know about Bill Kushner, and he's able to, particularly with my intention with the class, to make it about giving yourself permission and generating material. Bill Kushner does that about better than anybody. Bill Kushner is able to just generate and generate, and it's always interesting, and he's always pushing out beautiful poetry, yet he's able to put it in a form. These are sonnets, basically. There's a lot of rhymes. There's a lot of internal rhymes. It's an update of what Frank O'Hara was doing in a lot of ways. That's basically what it is. But Bill Kushner, took workshops with Louis Warsh. He was an off-Broadway playwright. He was there. He was at the fucking Poetry Project for years and years and years and years and years. Everybody knows Bill Kushner. He lived in Chelsea. He's a life, he lived in New York, I think, probably his whole life. And so, like, his work, he has an intimate understanding of those techniques because he was on that. I think there's some story about he read in front of Kenneth Koch, or he was in Kenneth Koch's workshop at the New School in like the 60s when he was young. And when he read, Kenneth Koch was like blown away. And he was like, Bill Kushner, I can make you a star. And Bill Kushner was like, didn't want that. He like freaked out, and he said, he didn't want Kenneth Koch to make him a star. So he like said no, and he kind of walked away from poetry for like a decade or something. I'm probably badly amending the story, but I think that's kind of interesting. He's kind of got a profound, but like maybe of talent that you might not immediately recognize. To me, he is kind of like Whitman or something. Like it's the Whitman kind of expanse and kind of embracing of like the cruise and like modern New York, cosmopolitan, whatever Whitman would be doing, he'd probably be Bill Kushner if he was alive. But it's like, all of the poems. So this book is called That April. So I thought it would be a good example of a diary poetry but New York school, because Bill Kushner's like second, third, probably third generation New York school in a way. This has blurbs from Eileen Miles, David Trinidad, and every poem is basically titled what the day was: 5:15, 5:16, 5:19, 5:20. So it's a sequence, but it's like it's very much located. This is something I didn't get into in the class like I probably wanted to. Is like in a lot of these New York school poems, you will see just like a compulsion to like geolocate. They are always naming like their time and place. It's like a cliche of the New York school to like talk about what time it is. It's 5:15 a.m. It's 12:49. It's 12, whatever it is. And then where you are. We're at Gym Spa. you know, we're on 2nd Avenue. We're, wherever that may be. Park Avenue South. We're at Max's Kansas City. I don't know why that's such a identifying mark of the New York school. I do think that New York is probably a place that's ruled by time, and you are so conscientious of like time and space here, and the mechanization of that, and the fame. Like I said, the branding. Empire State Building, everything's famous, right? But also the time. So I didn't want to make it about my technique. So right before the class was about to start, I was having a meeting with the administrator, and they were like, "Oh, this is so great you're teaching this class in the New York school." And so I immediately in my head started readjusting, thinking, "Oh, fuck, okay, well, I guess I don't have to talk about diary poetics, really. I can just talk about the New York school." So I started to think, okay, well, fuck, how do I reorient what I'm doing? Which, I didn't expect that. I expected I was going to have to lead with sort of talking about diary poetry, which, to be honest, probably does have more to do with, like, my particular technique. One of the things that I wanted to put across in the class was, at the very least, I want everybody in the class to come away with the maybe at least the faint notion that they can make their own book, right? And so at the end of the class, I showed everybody my chapbooks, and I was like, you should do this. This was the last thing I said, was like, put this together, put a Microsoft Word doc together, and just, this is 4 sheets of paper, whatever, 2 staples, print it out, booklet, staple it, and you'll have your own book. Like, just do this for yourself. If you don't have a book, if for nothing else than just have something to read from, it's just a good way to see your work. And so, because that's empowering to people, I think, it's empowering to everybody. If we all publish, if we all put our ideas out there and kind of trade and read each other, and you can spend time with it alone, we do hear each other in readings, and that's nice, but when you can spend time with somebody's work alone in your own privacy, that creates a different, and when you can see the work, I think that's also hugely important. When you can see it on the page and sort of consider it, spend time with it. In some ways, I do think it's unfair that the workshops ask people to critique. I didn't want to critique anything, it was like, but I felt like I should give feedback to what people were doing, because it was like they shared, and I was kind of trying to relate it to the subject matter of the class and stuff. But I also just wanted to celebrate whatever people chose to do. And like I said, I was thrilled that people even wrote anything and wanted to share it. Thank God. Shout out to Lee Moore and Ingrid Jacobson. They showed up. Thank you guys for coming out. That means a lot. And thank you to everybody who came out. But it helps a lot to have people that you're comfortable with and familiar with, because that just made it like, okay, well, like I'm comfortable, I can talk to them, and, I know that they helped out a lot with the sharing and stuff. It didn't have to be some awkward thing where it was like, oh God, is anybody gonna share anything? It was like they stepped up, and so it kind of made it easy for everybody to share, And I think people were excited about sharing. Like I said, I was pretty stoked about what everybody wrote. I was very impressed. I thought what everybody wrote was like very usable. You know, they could edit it or punch it up however they want, but I definitely thought everything that people came away from was like, uh, you know, because I guess part of the point of the class is like you're encouraging people to write. Basically, the prompt was just write about something that happened to you today, like a diary. You know, so you're encouraging people to write about something personal and to recount their experience sort of like in a first person lyrical way, but also to like heighten it and to make it poetry. But because it's a poetry diary, like the John Wiener stuff, like this other stuff, there's a little bit of a, like it's called Book of Sketches, right? There's a little bit of a quality to it that it's like, there's a briefness to, you know, and that doesn't necessarily, you know, lessen the strength of the work. In fact, I was impressed with that, what everybody felt. It did not feel weak at all to me. None of it felt like, oh, I can tell you wrote this in 20 minutes. It all felt like uh, very usable and finished, actually, in kind of an incredible way. Um, but I like sort of faking a quality of sloppiness. You know, like there's a cultivation you can have within that. That's like Ted Berrigan, I would say, is like the master of that. You know, he lived his life as sort of this, you know, impoverished, you know, big bearded, you know, uh, Ansel, Eddie, get me my cigarettes. And his poetry does have kind of like that Falstaffian or like that kind of great barreling kind of like wild bear of a humanity going through it. But there's, you know, he was in the army and supposedly he really squared the corners on his bed. You know, when he would make his bed, it was like army perfect. And you feel that in his poetry. You know, there is like an orderliness to it and everything in its right place, right? Even though it's bursting with all this heart and kind of this woolliness almost, it is a little bit more tightened up. Um, you know, I like the feeling of woolliness, I guess, in a way. I don't know, the stuff I've been attracted to more recently in the past couple years, I think. Um, yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, it's just about like opening that door a little bit for people. Uh, yeah, so I thought it went well. I'm gonna get paid. That's nice. Uh, what else? What else do I need to talk about? Anything? Fuck World War II. I mean, you know, that's the frustrating thing that it does drive me nuts, and why I harp on the MFA thing. And I apologize because I do feel like kind of a natural. I mean, my name is Proctor. You know, like a proctor, right, is some kind of administrator of tests or some kind of thing like that. It's some kind of academic teacher type test. It's like a test giver or something, right? Like you proctor a test. So I got to believe that somebody at some point in my family history was like some kind of teacher thing. My dad is very like professorial. He's kind of like an armchair philosopher, and you know, I mean, he's a genius and a poet. You know, as much as anybody I've met in New York or seen in New York, and so, um, and that's including all of the best people. You know, I think the quality that I see in the poets at the Poetry Project that I like, and maybe this is a Freudian projection, is like the quality that I see that my dad has, which is like, I don't know, there's just something of that generation that just like, especially when they really go for it and like break through to like, you know, pontificating, they really can get to some truth that you're like, uh, that's why you go there, you know, because it feeds you or something. You know, like Alice Notley is like that. When Alice Notley did the reading and the last time she was here, it was like, you know, it was important news for everybody to hear. You know, there was just important I remember, you know, when I was in my early 20s, my friend Zach would always ask me what my dad thought of stuff. What does your dad think about such and such, you know, political world issue? Because my dad always had, you know, kind of, you weren't going to hear as smart of a take. Maybe I'm just saying this because it's my dad. But my dad is kind of like a uniquely intelligent. I mean, he's a very, very, very intelligent person, you know? Maybe everybody thinks that about their dad. No, guys, it's true. My dad is smart. He's very smart, guys. I guess everybody feels that way about their dad, but you know, if you, he should have a YouTube channel. If my dad had a fucking YouTube channel, he'd probably have a million subscribers. If my dad just got on and he'd be Bill Maher. He'd be like a good, you know, hippie kind of Bill Maher. You know, he's very pro-Palestine. He's been that way for years and years. He's really into Christopher Hitchens. He like watches a lot of Christopher Hitchens videos on YouTube. Christopher Hitchens like you know, was like super atheist, you know, and like, you know, during the Bush era and the Iraq war and all that shit, it was nice to have somebody out there like really calling these fucking Christian assholes on their bullshit. All of them. All of them. There was a lot of religion, you know, involved in all of that stuff in a way that was, I don't know. You know, but my dad is a bass player, you know, he doesn't necessarily write things down with, you know, but he's like an oral composer. You know, I think he does conscientiously shape, you know, what he says with a panache and a sort of, you know, artistic bent. And just to be honest, he just defines things. I mean, him and my brother both. They should. If I was smart, I'd probably move back to fucking Columbus, Ohio, and just start a fucking podcast with like the people I grew up with. Because like, if you could bottle my brother Jack and my dad's kind of like punditry, or like, you know, not that they would consider it that, or just like their opinions. You know, if you could just my brother Jack is sort of like Bill Burr, but he's not like that. Like, I'm pretty sure my brother Jack like listens to Bill Burr, like, you know, thinks he's funny and shit. He was really into Chappelle Show when it was on. Jack knew all the fucking Chappelle Show. He's kind of a savant of comedy. He can remember fucking like he can do the voices and remember exactly what they said, and he's better at that stuff than I am, to be honest. And my parents would tell you that. They'd be the first to tell you. But I don't know. I'm not sure, and like maybe this is not a nice thing to say on the internet. I'm not sure if my brother I don't know if I don't know if he would want to. I don't know if he would want to become like a stand-up comedian, cuz like a lot of people have told him, and in fact I think it's true. I think if you just get him in on his own on something, he is like hysterically funny. You know, he is as funny as anybody you're going to fucking see. You know, he's as funny as, you know, any of the fucking Netflix whatever. But to be honest, I just don't know if that's actually what makes a stand-up comedian. I don't necessarily think being a good stand-up comedian is completely about, and this is going to sound crazy, but it's like you do have to be funny. It is about being funny, but like what, I don't know. That's not what I see in clubs. I don't see people being funny. I see, like, I don't know. It's like a craft. You know, it's completely like it's the jokes. People are judging you based on your fucking jokes now. That's really what it's about. You know, I don't necessarily know that my brother Jack is going to ever like write jokes. You know, I think that's something that would keep him from wanting to pursue that, you know. So that, you know, in a certain way, that's also what I'm trying to get at is like, how do you get at somebody's natural ability to, like, Jack is funny. He is going to make you laugh harder than anybody on TV, probably. How do you put that on stage? You know, why do you have to write jokes and have setup punchline and all this kind of stuff? Is that necessary? Like, how could Jack be? You know, I think it's one of the things that's interesting is all these podcasters do like live shows. You know, fucking Cumtown or whoever the fuck it is will do like a live. They go on tour and shit. It's like, what are they gonna do? They just sit on stage and talk. It's amazing that I missed out on that. It's unbelievable that I'm not like some famous podcaster. Isn't that a pathetic thing to say? That's like the most pathetic sentence you could possibly say. Oh, that's so pathetic. But it is. It's true. You know, like I love conversation as a form. To be honest, I wish I would have continued the best podcast we had, the Heart Tree Press podcast that Nick Joswiak put together when we lived on Woodbine in Ridgewood. That was a great, because I had ideas for podcasts, believe me. I wanted to do a podcast that was more like when I was a little kid, I had a micro cassette recorder and I would tape things off of the TV that I thought were funny. I would do skits, I'd record music. So I'd like to do a podcast that's more like that, like a sound collage of like a lot of different things, skits, poems, songs, ambient recordings, whatever it may be. More like just kind of an audio kind of scrapbook and just like an audio montage, like a micro cassette tape, like a mixtape kind of, but of just like poems, you know, but maybe all stuff that we made, right? So this is kind of what the Heart Tree Press thing was. I never really had the discipline. If you watch my Memory Zine episode, that's the version of it that I did. But the Heart Tree Press podcast was actually a very good version of it. You know, I thought he just recorded some of our conversations. He put some music in. He edited it well. He put in good segues, things that I wouldn't necessarily have taken the time to, you know, finesse to do them the right way. But nobody ever listened to it, and I don't know. We only did like one or two of them. I think he got pissed because we weren't, like, I don't know. He felt like we were like using him or taking advantage of him. I don't know. I feel bad about that whole. I feel bad. I don't know. I've ruined a lot of my personal relationships for stupid reasons. I don't know. There's just so much pressure to fucking, you know, when you're not succeeding, that it's hard to be good to people, I feel like. That's my lesson of the day, kids. Professor Proctor. What's Dr. Proctor? I need to get a PhD so I can call myself doctor. I can't go by Professor. How about Mr. Proctor? Mr. Proctor, I would be a great fucking teacher, man. It's a crime. Honestly, this is why I harp on the MFA thing. It's not because I don't get published. I don't give a fuck. I would like to have a job where I don't have to resort to insane fucking living circumstances, and I'd have some kind of like pride. You know, my parents, I know my mom especially would probably be like proud of me if I was a fucking college professor. You know? And I feel like I would be good for the children of America. You know, not the children, I'm kidding. You know, the young adults of America. The people who are reaching legal drinking age. You know? I could help them get on the right path. You know? Save them from becoming what I am. Show them, you know. That's what I try to do with the open mic, you know. Essentially, it is like a not-for-profit university. Extremely not-for-profit. But maybe we could give more feedback. I don't know. Would that be something people would like at the open mic? What if we gave everybody like a 5-minute critique after they're done? That's what Kuzu Daddy was saying. He was saying we should do like an American Idol where we like have somebody who's like mean about it. Just tell the truth. Be honest. I don't know. Was I just on here a couple days ago? When was the last time I did this? I feel like I was on here 2 days ago. God, should I read what I wrote? I mean, it's embarrassing. I'm teaching the class. The sample that I read was definitely the worst thing anybody read. And it was pretty clear. I mean, it's not. I'm not saying that. It's a good indicator, you know, of you know, where your ideas might be located or how people might be receiving them. That I think people did kind of retain their own voice in their own samples. You know, even though I mentioned things in the class about changing, you know, tenses and kind of jamming everything together as far as like point of view, first person, second person, third person, blah, 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 change, you know, and just kind of having abrupt kind of non sequiturs, jump cuts. Even though I did make it a point to mention that kind of stuff in the class, I don't think that anybody, you know, like I said, I'm trying to give people permission. I think that I know for me it did take years. That's why I'm saying that is these writers did kind of break down those walls for me, where it's like, yeah, you can just kind of jam two things together, and you can kind of put that in there just because you like it, and you can kind of put that in there because it looks nice. You know, if you have a reason for putting something in there as an artist, nobody else needs to even know what that reason is. That if you put it there and it's alive, then it needs to be there. That's really your job as an artist. You know, if something is there and it makes it come to life, then it's right. And so, you know, I wish that people in English classes, people in writing workshops did have more of an approach that was like the art room or an art school or something, or like experimental, where there is some kind of, it's cut and paste, you know, or there is some kind of hidden or you know, not necessarily a prompt, but like you know, even if it's just a personal reason for why you compose the poem a certain way, or why you it is kind of like spell casting ultimately. You know, if what we say is manifestation, if what we say does come true, then I think our poems are the like most carefully considered version of that. And so, you know, that's kind of a dangerous thing to maybe teach in a normal college, but like I think that's what everybody knows about poetry, and what everybody goes there for is like the potency of it. And there is a kind of like chanting and a uh, incantation and to in your spell, you're reading the spell, you know. And so I know with a lot of my poetry, you know, I try to write things that I want to happen. You know, it's like this book, this Red Juice book. There is a compositional quality where things are written like they feel like they're written from like almost like you're in your sleep or something, or it's written from like the periphery of like sense. It's written like out of the corner of your eye, or it's written like a song that's heard through the wall. You know, like when you're phonetically translating something like this, or when you have, you know, language poetry, or like speaking in tongues type thing. You know, a lot of that time, that kind of stuff, that's like the effect that I'm after. That kind of can be, I think, a more rewarding artistic language, you know. But if you marry that to something figurative that can root it to something that people can take hold of, you know, that's the kind of stuff I was encouraging. I was impressed with the people in the workshop who were able to root these things that they were writing in the workshop in like these very firm, like metaphorical, sustained, you know, like complete motifs and stuff. I was really impressed by that, you know, because a lot of what I was trying to impart was just like throwing everything at the wall, having, you know, scattered, sloppy jump music video, MTV style quick cutting, you know. And so, you know, if a little bit of that, when people, it's not about necessarily getting them to do it a certain way. It's like if they try to do it and it comes out their way, or even if enters what they're doing a little bit, that can be enough. You know, they can maintain their prosody and their sense of just the, I think as in a certain way as a writer you can't get rid of that. You know, your rhythm and what, for whatever reason, why we land and why we spin the sentences the way that we do. It's related to our body. It's related to our gait. It's related to, you know, all of it. Our brain, our experience, our trauma. And, you know, people all have their own individual kind of like, voice, right? So the technique comes out in their voice, you know, and that's what's cool about it, is seeing the way that everybody, or not. I mean, I was just happy that if anybody got anything out of it, it seemed like they did, and you know, it's just something that you can use. It's just something to have in your arsenal. You know, if you're looking for, you know, things to write about, it's just a good write. You know, you'll never run out of material if you just write about what happened to you, right? There's always something that happened to you that day, something you can remember. That's really what my work is I'm just trying to remember every little thing that happened to me and record it, you know, for as in total as I can, is in sort of like a miniature kind of total of everything. I want to have everything down in my life. So, like, theoretically, I've got all these fucking notebooks. This is how I wanted to start the class. I've got this big chest full of notebooks, but it's so heavy and it's up there. And I just wanted to say, these are all my notebooks, you know. Ideally, I'd just like to scan all of them and put them all online, publish all of them. Someday, hopefully, there will be, like, you know, a 60 volume set, facsimile set. You know how they did like Kurt Cobain's journal where they like they like printed out a fucking like exact version of it that you could like buy in a store with like the fucking cover of it and shit, and the fucking like lined pages and like his handwriting. Someday there will be like a 120 volume set, The Life of Matt Proctor. It's all these just little fucking pocket notebooks. But the, you know, part of the beauty is this: you could take it with you and read it anywhere. You know, there needs to be more pocket books. You know, you should be able to put a book in your pocket and not have to have a bag or carry it. You know, that's why I publish, you know, the fucking pocket-sized books that I do. No bags, no carrying. When I'm president, pocket size. There will be more pocket-sized books. This is a really good New York School diary book. This is definitely one of my biggest influences, I would say. The Journal of Ugly Sites. This takes off from a prompt from Bernadette Mayer. Bernadette Mayer's prompt was just keep a journal of ugly sites. And so it's like, write down things that are ugly. Whatever that means to you, ugly sites. But it's like, it's very New York School where it's naming all these places and all these people and traveling all around the city. There's dates and, So Stacy Samasic was the director of the Poetry Project before Kyle. This is like a pocket book. If you look at my travel books, you'll definitely see that this was kind of an influence on that. I didn't talk about it in the class. It's a bonus feature. Okay, so I'm going to go for 2 hours, so I got 14 more minutes. God, I don't know. Is my streaming... I mean, I guess it's not as funny as it used to be. What else? Yeah, I mean, with the open mic, that kind of... The college of that is more just, like, energetic. I feel like when you're with people and when you're in that circumstance where it's Monday night, there's a bunch of people there, people are drinking, I'm high. The teaching or the work that I'm trying to do with people is more like just like uplifting them and also just the exposure to everything that they're seeing. Ideally, you're giving them just such a variety and an array of just like a buffet of talent and art and music, poetry, comedy, humanity, real people in a room, gathering, artists, seeing each other, being a part of a community, supporting each other, making friends, forming alliances, making enemies, not talking to each other anymore. Giving each other a cold shoulder. No, so, yeah, I don't know. I'd like to be a part of the fucking... I'd like to be a teacher in a fucking school. There is a lot to say. There is a lot to talk about. At the open mic, obviously, you don't talk about anything. It's more about people getting on the diving board and jumping off. That's the education. People facing their fear, showing them that it's okay, and then pushing them out of the airplane. Or just, I don't know. In New York, you have to look like you know what you're doing at all times, and you never ask questions about anything ever. And so with the open mic, it's like that. I never tell anybody anything that's going on, really. They don't need to know. They don't care. They get up, they do it, bam. People rarely complain that they don't know when they're going up. They rarely will go, oh, man, I really wish... Occasionally people do, but it's not that often, It's New York. It's just like you got to be ready at any time, and you got to nail it at any time, You just have to be that good, or else forget about it, And so there are tons and tons and tons of really fucking talented people, really good looking, talented, smart people with style and money who are young, who are 15 years younger than you. They're richer than you. They're smarter than you. They're better looking than you. They're younger than you. They're taller than you. They have health insurance. And yet here we are, just slugging it out, trying to make our way any way we know how, trying to make our name. Trying to make something of ourselves. Trying to make our name in the business. People are going to fucking know who we are. Yeah, so I don't know, I would teach more classes. It would be nice to just, if you had classes to, to get, the way I was looking at it was like the open mic. It's like, okay, the first time you do it, you're scared. But like, this might be the first of hundreds of times that I do this, So like, just getting experience doing it, going into it. It's close enough to what I already do. You know, it's like I'm already used to like leading a thing in front of people. Um, you know, there weren't. I didn't know if anybody was going to show up, so I was thrilled with the turnout. You know, but it was still, you know, you're still nervous because you're in front of people, and it's an interesting position to be because people do put a lot of trust in you as a teacher, and that's, to be honest, it's it's kind of a flattering position to be in for somebody to say that to you, like, I'm willing to trust that, like, you're worth listening to. You know, I'm going to go out of my way to take this class because I think you can teach me something. That's kind of it, you know. I don't know. Uh, I can definitely verbalize, you know, a lot of information about this stuff, and anecdotes, and, like I said, tips, pointers. Um, but it's also an environment and a vibe, you know, like with the open mic and with the workshop. You know, it's like you want people to feel comfortable and supported and warm, like they're gonna do their best, and they're gonna do, and they want to. And you know, one of the reasons why I go so ape when I'm performing is like, that spirit can get into other people and it can free other things in them. If you're a little animated, you know, if you put a little bit of Holy Ghost power into the recitation, you start to see it go through other people too. And that's electricity running through people. That's life running through people. That's people getting turned on. That's people's energy. You know, we live in such a cool culture where people are supposed to be deadpan. They're supposed to doubt themselves. They're supposed to be neurotic or insecure, or, you know, not believe in themselves. You know, they want you to be dead. They want you to be a zombie. They want you to be numb. They don't want you to believe in your ideas or self-publish or to even think you can be a poet. I mean, okay, well, that's the other thing. Teaching this class, it's like if I went home and explained to people that I went to college with, like, I went to theater school with, like, oh, I teach a poetry class now. They'd be like, oh, yeah, of course that jack-off Matt Proctor's teaching a poetry class. He was always a pretentious piece of shit. Of course that's what he's doing. Oh, man. No, they'd be like, what authority does he have? The guy who was in the Indiana University fucking team football commercial, what authority does he have? But I don't know. You do something long enough. To me, like I said, there's a pragmatic information that I can deliver to people. Try this, try this. Here's like a, you know, Burnett Maris' thing. She writes 12 lines at noon and writes 2 lines at when she goes to sleep. I don't know, just whatever. Any kind of new way of thinking about it, expanding your sense of where it can come from and how it works. I don't know. I want to free people into thinking about poetry more as like a way of living and a state of being. Poetry is a state of being, maybe. Moving through the world, experiencing, you know, Central Park, experiencing the skyscrapers, experiencing the sky. It's all poetry. Life is poetry, really. That's really what the 365 24/7 circumferential nature of the diary piece is. You're just recognizing that all of life is poetry. Everything that happens is poetry. Certain things have wabi sabi, or they stick out to you as like that was a poetic moment. That was like part of the magic of life, or the coincidence, or the accident, or the poetry. You know, the magic of how things unfurl, how things unfoil. Is that a word? Um, and really just marking that down. To me, my job is like witnessing it and showing it as evidence. It's empirical, right? By just showing people this is what happened. I don't know. And it's also just about living your fucking life, you know? Creating magic, living magically, manifesting magic. You know, I mean, what could be more romantic? We're poets in New York, you know? We're reading our poetry in fucking bars in New York. You know, we're teaching classes. We're at the fucking poetry project at St. Mark's Church. We're filming poetry. We're publishing each other. We're all having sex. We're all you know, we're all, you know, going doing stand-up comedy. We're vlogging. It's all poetry. It's all exploding. I mean, it's all lyrical, um, and just sucking the marrow out of life, living it as deeply. I've tried other things. You know, to be honest, comedy, it's not, it's just not as deep. You know, it's not all there. Poetry gives you everything. I have to be in poetry because it's everything. It's everything there. And being around poets, I wish they would loosen up a little bit. You know, I'm trying to inspire these fucking people to be fun and to dance and sing like the little puckish pipes of Pan that they are, with your little laurel wreath and your little ring of daisies. You know, play your little Clifford flute and jump around, you little goat people. This is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to enchant the fairies and the um, you know, the magical forest creatures. Um, the fawns. What the hell are those little things called in the forest? The magical not druids. So we're creating magic. I'm getting more confident. You know, the thing is, if I was just given, so as I do this stuff, I'm getting more confident. You know, I do think that class, it felt good. I mean, part of it was I was sober, so I didn't massively spin out or slip or do anything weird energetically. And so, like, I do think it just kind of like, you got to trust the knowledge, you know, and the years. And so, you know, like, I've seen a lot of poetry. I've read a lot of poetry. I've been around it long enough. You know, I've written it long enough. I have taken a good amount of workshops, even though I'm not, you know, in workshops all the time. I've taken enough of them to know how it kind of works. And so, I didn't feel necessarily like in over my head totally, because I mean, to be honest, that's just a part of life. If you want to like really try to go for it and be anything in this life, you're going to like constantly getting pushed into situations where you're like having to do new stuff. You know, I think that's the point of it. You know, it's like you've got to get out of your comfort zone to break through to new levels. You know, when I first started doing the open mic at KGB, I was pretty fucking scared. I was pretty nervous every week. You know, I was definitely nervous every fucking week for like the first 6 months or something, you know? And I still get nervous, but that's part of the point of doing it, is you just get acclimated. But, you know, other things can make you nervous. Reading, uh, you know, like, in front of fucking at the Brooklyn Rail thing or whatever. It's like you might get a little nervous, or the marathon, you know, you might get a little nervous. Or so teaching this class, it's like, okay, I've never driven a fucking car before, but at some point you got to get behind the wheel and fucking just press the gas, turn, you know, just hit the fucking road. We're going on a joyride. And then, you know, you just go. You know, you got to start somewhere. And so hopefully I'll get more opportunities to do it. You know, I would start some kind of weekly workshop. Ashley should do a fucking, I've told her this, she should do a work. It'll never happen, but they have this real nice apartment that, you know, they should do a workshop, and they don't. You know, if you have a nice apartment in New York City, it's your obligation to host a poetry workshop, okay? If you have a living room that will fit like 8 to 10 people, it's your obligation to have a poetry workshop, because these are the third places now, right? Now that the third place is gone or whatever, it's like it's house shows. It's you do a reading in somebody's backyard or somebody's apartment, or we're lucky at KGB, but like you have to pay for that. There is like a tax. There's a tax to be at KGB every week because of the name, because of fucking the space and the pedigree and the heritage and the magic of it, and it's worth it. But uh, the economics of poetry are just like we got to fight to put it everywhere we can. So if you have an apartment or you have a space where you can do that, it's something to think about. I mean, Zoom, I guess, is the third space. I was thinking about this for most guys my age, the third space is online video games. The third space is Xbox Live. It's fucking Call of Duty headset. Or Twitch, YouTube live streams. Scenes from a Life YouTube channel is your third space. My vlogs are your third space. Just go to my vlogs. It's your happy place, everybody. I don't know. So this Pluto and Aquarius thing, there's supposed to be some kind of major transformation occurring. That's what they always say with the astrological shit that's going to kick your ass. You're like, oh, it's going to get rid of old stuff. You're going to be getting rid of so much old stuff. It's going to be great. You're going to be transforming. It's going to be transformational. Pulling you into alignment. Everything's going to be coming into alignment. Yeah, it's very painful when everything comes into alignment. So, I don't know. Pluto enters Aquarius, it's supposed to be... I've got my fingers crossed. I'm really ready. I'm so ready for, to take poetry nationwide. I'm ready to be the face of poetry in this country. I'm ready to be the face of the poetry movement in this country. Put me on the cover of Time magazine. The desktop publishing revolution. The open mic revolution. The open mic revolution has begun at KGB Red Room. People are empowering themselves and taking back their lives. Don't go to your job. Do not pay your rent. Stop paying your fucking rent. People need to put their money. It's never going to happen. Stop paying your fucking rent. Stop going to your fucking job. Write poetry. Smoke weed. Have sex. Tantric meditation. Go for walks. Ground. Like lay in the park and like ground. Get book collections. Read. Listen to Terrence McKenna audio on YouTube. I don't know. I just, there should be more like pure art. The internet does kind of, like a lot of things on the internet are not necessarily like pure art. They're, especially on TikTok or Instagram, it's like, it's all like how to make your music sound better, or like here's how to make people hear your music more. Here's tips like how to promote yourself better. It's like, this is a fucking video on TikTok about promoting yourself. It's like, it's not content, it's not art. You're not seeing somebody's music video on TikTok. That's what it should be. TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Reels, it should just be like public access, where it's like everybody's got their own little show where they do whatever the fuck they want that's actually creative, and then they should post that. Rather than like, I don't know. It's just promotion. It's all self-fucking promotion. We know what it is. But I don't know. Okay, that's 2 hours. I got 3 people watching though, so I feel like I'm obligated to go on, because I love you and I want to just be with you. I want to be with you, Robin. I want to be with you. Oh God, what else should I talk about? Jesus Christ. Do I have anything else? Let me check my outline. So this is my outline right here. God, I don't know. I feel kind of distant from poetry world, to be honest. Like, even though I feel like I do fit there and I am like, that is like my family, actually, in a weird way. I do feel like I'm a part of the extended family of poetry, and New York poetry especially, even though I'm like this weird, like bad, kind of sneering, snarky, like jeering person in the corner, sort of like looking daggers at everybody. Uh, I do feel like I'm a part of. That's what being in a family is all about. Is dysfunction and resentment and not talking to each other and just making it weird, basically. In short, just making it weird for no reason. No, I don't know. I love everybody in person. I'm a good guy. I'm a nice person. I love everyone. I love you. Thank you for watching. I don't know. Um, but, you know, like my whole thing at the marathon was about movies. And so, my poetry's about movies now. My poem is a big, long movie. A big, long notebook movie. Oh, God. People are leaving the stream. Oh, no. Somebody just left. It hurts me every time somebody leaves the stream. You know that? Every single time somebody leaves. It's just like, what am I doing wrong? I mean, I really appreciate whoever's watching, but it's also like, I don't. How do you get people to? It makes no sense. You've either got 0 people watching or there's like thousands of people watching. Like there's no middle ground. You know, you can't get like 150. You can't get like, at least that's how it seems. You know, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't talk about obscure avant-garde, you know, poetry techniques. uh, on my YouTube. Maybe I should make it about something. Well, okay, one of the things that I keep seeing in like TikTok advice, you know, content is like whatever you're the more niche you are, the better actually. And in fact, that's how you should brand yourself. Like if I was smart, the way that I would title my YouTube videos and the way that I would brand my channel would be Life of a Poet in New York. Here's my vlog about the life of a open mic host slash comedian slash poet in New York slash teacher. So today I woke up and I taught my poetry class, and then I went to the everyday grocery. I got my cherry sticks. I came back. I rolled 2 joints. I smoked. I checked my emails. That's my poetry vlog. Here's my life. Here's my day in a life as a poet in New York. So yeah, in fact, maybe if I was more niche, maybe it would be better. Maybe if I became like the New York school guy, the diary poetry guy. Yeah, so I don't know. You know, if I wanted to market myself intelligently rather than just putting weird titles on all my videos that nobody could ever possibly figure out what the fuck they mean. Fettuccine Alfredo. Yeah, let me click this video. It's a screen cap of just some weird white guy, and there, you know, there's this girl behind him over his shoulder. It's called Fettuccine Alfredo. Let's see what this is about. It's got 30 views. This has got to be good. My single room occupants video is kind of plummeting in the ratings. I don't know what happened. I jinxed it, I guess. But that was my tent pole. That was my big content view generator. And for some reason, people have stopped watching it. So there goes my you know, I had a nice flow of subscribers. I was getting a lot of new subscribers. And I kind of like took my pedal off the metal during the holidays when I should have put more content out. That whole week after Christmas, that was a missed opportunity because a lot of people are at home, they're looking for something to watch. And I was just kind of taking it easy, but I was on break. I was on my vacation. You know, it does I do, you know, at least I get to feel like, you know, I like running a weekly show in Manhattan. I think it's very exciting, you know. And I'm proud of, I think as we get more confidence, as I get more confidence, that'll only make the show better. You know, I haven't even begun to do what I can do on stage because I'm so nervous and I'm still trying to prove myself. You know, I've been kept in this like holding pattern for like a decade where it's like I've, you know, thank you guys for watching, but it's like Jesus Christ. You know, there's no verification whatsoever that I'm like uh I haven't really broken through in any way, right? Like I appreciate, and one of the best things about the open mic, but even before that, you know, is like I definitely have people that are supportive and who have been like fans for a while, you know. But with the open mic especially, it's a nice way to get to know people and to also just get out, you know, get visibility. People know who I am. You know, they get familiar with who I am without me having to necessarily it's like that work is compounded because I'm in front of people every week. And I have that consistency. Um and so I think that is how you kind of build public awareness of who you are. I don't know how to break through. You know, it was like, what should we get Chris Rock on our fucking show? Like, how do we do this? How do we get people to actually give a shit? You know, other than like, you know, the people who sort of cycle through and are performers and who are thrilled to do it. You know, how do we make it seem like some significant thing to anybody else and like make it over with the crowd, right? Is what they say in wrestling. How do you get over with the crowd, right? Certain wrestlers weren't, you know, like The Rock is a good example. When The Rock first came to WWF, they called him Rocky Maivia, and he was a face and blah. Nobody liked him. Everybody hated him. And then he turned heel, and people hated him. But at a certain point, he started to just get into his catchphrases and this and that, and that's how he got over. That started to work. But people hated him at first. You know, he was the least liked guy out there. And so it's hard. You know, there is an awkward period of like a couple years. I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm just trying to throw myself into this and why it's important that I throw myself into this as much as possible is because if you really want to do something, I do think that maybe this is misguided, but like there's a couple years where you just have to like go all in. You know, it's like once a week is not even enough. You know, to be honest, let's listen to this fucking thing Louis C.K. was talking about when he first moved to New York. He had a motorcycle. He lived someplace in the village. You know, he said he could pay for his apartment with his stand-up money. He said he did 9 shows a night. And he'd ride his motorcycle around all these different shows. It's like, that sounds pretty fucking cool. Nobody's got that life now. Nobody's doing 9 shows a night and paying their rent in Manhattan off their fucking, you know, unless it's Sam Morril or fucking somebody like that. It's not just some like low level comedian guy that's making that and doing that. Like, so it's like we're looking for that. We're looking for that apprenticeship. We're looking for that minor league period of like where you're breaking yourself in and you're figuring it out. You're figuring it out, you know, who the audience is kind of telling you who you are. You know, you're kind of trying to be this or that, and there's something there the whole time that's correct. And you just kind of you figured out one little bit at a time. Okay. You know, the suits for me, right? When I started wearing the suit. But now I need something else. I've been wearing the suit too long, so I need some kind of new way to keep it fresh. The suits are kind of getting played out. But, you know, I think that's one of the also one of the interesting things about maybe being an artist or just a person is a lot of these artists, you see them evolve over time. You see their looks change. You see them shed their skin. And in fact, maybe that's a part of it. You know, somebody like Bob Dylan, right, is kind of the ultimate example of that, where it's just like every 2 or 3 years or year or so, you know, the guy just comes out with something completely different. And everybody goes, what the fuck is he doing now? Now he's doing something real off the wall. And it's like you do kind of have to be constantly moving forward, constantly trying new things, intuiting where to go, what's right. You know, when something that's why feel is so important. You know, I don't necessarily think people are wrong to trust their feelings, because the feel of if something is right, I do think is like everybody's guide. Like that's what the truth is. Pe- People are all feeling something together. When you can unlock that and define that and say that, uh, that's like because it's there. Everybody feels that it's there, you know, and you can't really fight it because everybody knows that it's there. Um, you know, like when voting and politics, a lot of people go by feel and stuff like that. And it's like, well, they can be led astray, but generally, I don't know. Intuition, feeling your ways through stuff. I think, well, as artists, I think the decisions that they make are like feel. Is something right? Does it look right? Is it right? You know, it's not an intellectual question. It's not something you can reason through or even think through necessarily. It's just like, should that paint be there? Does it feel right? Is it not, you know? Is this music hitting? Is it not hitting? If you know, you know. Um, God, is there anything else to talk about? I don't know. We're embarking on a new. It's the dawning of a new age. January 20th, Pluto enters Aquarius. Hopefully, it'll mean big things. Hopefully, we will finally be able to just, like, I don't know, turn this thing around. You know, I think we got a lot of good ideas in how we can help save the planet and make human life kind of worthwhile. You know, just very banal, uninteresting people have been in control for a long time. Tech people have too much influence. People with bad taste, people with no taste, people with no fucking style. We need, a country of people who are turned on, who are listening to each other closely, who are thinking intricately, creating beauty, activated, publishing, vlogging, being nice, feeling deeply, thinking about the food they're eating, waking the fuck up to all the poison, fighting back, saying we're not going to take this anymore. We're not going to go to these jobs. We're not going to eat this dog food. We're not going to eat this toxic waste that you're trying to feed us. We demand basic human rights. We demand a place to live. We demand books, fucking library cards, notebooks, free weed, government stand-up comedy classes. I mean, just let everybody just live their fucking lives. Whatever work they want to do, just let them do it, and let them create art, write, let them play music, let them jam. Everybody's got a music room in their house. Just let them all jam. Just automate the labor and let people jam. Let the dads jam in their garages. Get the guitars, the Fender dual reverbs out. Get the Guitar Center fucking drums. I've been into Guns N' Roses recently. Use Your Illusion and the spaghetti incident. Guns N' Roses, Jesus Christ. Well, I wrote this. I want to read this poem about punk rock karaoke. This I like. This is one of the best poems I think I've written ever. It's called Chinese Democracy. It's about Guns N' Roses. January 17th, Chinese Democracy. First of all, okay, I'm going to stop right there. I'm pausing. This is the director's commentary. Chinese Democracy, for those who don't know, is the title of the long-awaited Guns N' Roses. So, you know, after the Slash got kicked, Axl kind of retooled the band, and he had all these he had Buckethead in it, and all these crazy people. And so apparently, you know, people were waiting for this album, Chinese Democracy, forever. They were working on this album forever, and they spent all this fucking money on it, supposedly millions of dollars on this fucking record. And people were waiting for it forever and ever and ever. And tracks leaked. You know, there was a track called Catcher in the Rye. And I think it finally came out in like 2005 or 6. I was listening to it. It's kind of interesting. It's got actually a surprising number of listens on Spotify. A lot of the Chinese Democracy tracks have got like 35 million plays. It's like, I don't know who the fuck is listening to Chinese Democracy, but it doesn't seem like it's a total bomb. And so, you know, I do think Axl, and I think Guns N' Roses, for being like kind of a sleazy, like, just like guitar fucking run and gun drinking band, like, they have kind of like, I don't know, they have the touch. You know, they recognize, you know, authenticity. A lot of their cover songs, Ain't It Fun? So anyway, Chinese Democracy. Axl Rose's Chinese Democracy. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. At punk rock karaoke, everybody sang Guns N' Roses. The tattoo artists and heroin addicts. Except John Ryan, our childhood friend in the Navy, who either sang Secret Agent Man or Fucking Hostile by Pantera. They had dollar pitchers and brand representatives were on hand to give you a free pack of smokes if you let them scan your ID. John Ryan puked in the backyard, then picked up a French fry out of the mess and re-ate it. People who looked like Glenn Danzig were horrified. Rat Boy was aghast, but we were proud. That was our friend. Drinking double Captain and Cokes at Thunder Jackson's. Puking on the side of Tommy's mom's minivan all the way home. So that's Chinese Democracy. It's about punk rock karaoke. So we used to go to this thing. I spent my youth. You want to know what Indie Sleaze was about? It was about punk rock karaoke. I wasted my youth. The ultimate place to waste your youth at punk rock karaoke. And it was at this place called the High Five, which I think turned into a bar called Circus or something. But it was really the same place. It was called the High Five. We played a lot of the Audible Detonation gigs were at the High Five. It was sort of like, I don't know, the like the Arlene's Grocery of maybe it was a little cooler than that. It was maybe like the Bowery Electric. It was a little sleazier than that, though. What was it kind of like? I don't know. It's hard to compare it to New York. Maybe it was like the Auto Shrunken Head. It was sort of like that in a way. It wasn't that old guy hipster. But anyway, so Auto Shrunken Head, High Five had punk rock karaoke every Monday. You know, once again, the weekly Monday. And we would go with John Ryan, usually, when he was home. He was in the Navy. And so he would come home on leave. Just rip-roaring trying to fucking party. Just because he's in the Navy, he's on an aircraft carrier fucking, 9 months in a row or whatever. So it's like, of course he's going to binge drink double Captain and Cokes for 2 weeks straight when he's on leave, So we go to fucking punk rock karaoke, and I think it's dollar pitchers. They sell you a pitcher of Miller Lite or whatever for like, it's a big plastic thing. And then, like I said in the poem, they got a person with Camel or whatever the fuck it is who, like, is giving away free packs of cigarettes. They scan your fucking driver's license. So I'd give John Ryan my driver's license, and he'd scan it to get a free pack of smokes. And so he's getting blackout fucking drunk. I mean, so fucking... And he's in the Navy, so, those guys can drink a lot. And, I like going, but it wasn't punk rock at all. There were no punk rock people to speak of, really. Everybody sang Guns N' Roses for some fucking reason. I never heard so many... I didn't even know there were that many Guns N' Roses songs. I literally thought there was Sweet Child of Mine and, Welcome to the Jungle. And then, like, of course, there's November Rain, and then Paradise City. That's literally all of the Guns N' Roses songs. As far as I was concerned, those were all the Guns N' Roses songs. But apparently there's more. Night Train. I like Night Train. I'm not that into Patience, really. It's kind of too slow. But Guns N' Roses might have been the last rock band of that type, that kind of big, like, 70s style, drinking ass, where they kind of had a dominance over, like Van Halen. They weren't as big as Van Halen, but they were kind of like, they could write classic songs, maybe. Or they were approaching that. Maybe that's giving them too much credit. I tried to listen to November Rain. I think the video does a lot of the work there. The video is incredible. I remember seeing the video as a kid. If you've never seen the November Rain video, do yourself a favor and get on fucking YouTube and dial that up right now. Because the November Rain video is epic as hell. The song itself, I'm not sure. I was listening to it because I thought maybe I'd do it at the at the open mic, but I don't know. It didn't really it didn't hit me in the same way as it once did, I guess, as a young man. But anyway, Guns N' Roses. They're back. Well, I think because they're on TikTok. There's all these TikTok videos that pop up of Axl Rose because his voice is shot. I mean, the dude, it's so done. Which is, not hard to believe because Axl Rose's voice was always kind of crazy. It was always kind of, how the fuck did he ever sing that way? To be honest, because it's like falsetto, but it's also like screaming. It's like, how the fuck did he do that? I don't know. It's piercing. Yeah! It's like, what the fuck? So I'm not really surprised that his voice is shot, but I kind of like Guns N' Roses when I was in high school. My first girlfriend liked Guns N' Roses. She liked that song, My Michelle, for some reason, so I downloaded that and put it on a mix CD. Trying to understand her. Trying to decipher the mystery. Who was she? So I listened to My Michelle. Guns N' Roses, I don't. So anyway, we're at Punk Rock Karaoke. And all of the punk, first of all, they all look like they're in fucking Danzig. They all look like they're in the Misfits. They all look like Rob Zombie. They're tatted. They're all tattoo artists. Every fucking person at Punk Rock Karaoke is like either a service industry worker, a bartender, probably, or a tattoo artist. I mean, everybody. And they're all fucking heroin, pierced. Their hair's dyed jet black. They're wearing fishnets, big Doc Martens. Punk Rock Karaoke. It was more like hair metal. Everybody looked like they were in fucking Motley Crue or something. And they all sang Guns N' Roses. It was like being on the Sunset Strip, except in Columbus, Ohio on High Street, on campus. All these dirtbags in Columbus, Ohio singing fucking Night Train. I used to love her, but I had to kill her. It's like, what the fuck? What is wrong with you dirtbags that you love fucking Guns N' Roses so much? There's nothing trash here. I'm going to smoke my Camels and sing some Guns N' Roses. I guess if it was like Sebastian Bach or something, it'd be worse. But that was eye-opening to me because they were not. It was not punk rock. They're not singing. The Ramones or whatever the fuck. I mean, what even is real punk rock? No one was. They didn't even have that. They weren't singing the Clash necessarily or the Sex Pistols. It was all like Guns N' Roses, Tool. So John Ryan, he would sing Secret Agent Man in his inimitable fashion, or fucking Hostile. I just remember John Ryan on stage screaming, fucking Hostile! Fucking Hostile! And we were young then. We were in our 20s, early 20s. And we didn't know how brutal the world and music would become. Now everything is like insanely brutal death metal. Everybody's got a face tattoo. Everybody's rat boy. Yeah, so yeah, I was on Guns N' Roses talk. One of the things TikTok loves to do is show you like singers who can't actually sing. Like one of the big things on TikTok is Enrique Iglesias. I liked Enrique Iglesias. I guess because it was just like sex music or like hot guy music. I felt like I could kind of relate to Enrique Iglesias. And I thought, okay, he's cool. I mean, maybe, I can be identified with this guy and maybe that can work in my favor. I don't know. And I liked his songs. I liked Escape. I like I Can Be Your Hero, Baby. I liked Baby, I Like It. But apparently the dude cannot sing at all and never could. What a shock. Who cares? That's not what people pay for. Wayne Newton. Wayne Newton can't sing anymore. I mean, people just pay to see celebrities. They just want. They think that makes it like significant because it's like this famous immortal, and there's awareness and there's eyeballs on it. Like the more people see something, the more real it is, or something, which is not true. Everything is equally real, and everything is worth considering. That was one of the points I made in my poetry lecture today. Is like we're trying to include the overlooked or the small, or in dailiness. Everything is a part of life. Even the liminal spaces and the off the things that you're looking at that you're not intending to look at. It's all actually there. It's all equal in a way. You know, everything that exists is kind of equal in a weird way, and that it does exist. And so, trying to catalog that and notice everything, notice the divine light in everything, even inanimate objects, the spirit within the inanimate object, the creature, the soul, the magic within the inanimate object. Uh, part of how we respect the universe in all molecules and all things. Uh, should I end there? There was this Terrence McKenna fucking video that just popped in my head. Is that enough? Maybe I should quit now. Thank you for watching. This has gone 2.5 hours. There's no reason to continue. But 2 people are watching, I think, if that statistic is actually correct. And I appreciate that. And Ashley has liked this video 10 times. And I appreciate that because it makes it look like people actually care. And people need that, People, they want to be at something that is already liked and already popular. People want to be at something that's already popular, The paradox. The social paradox. They only want to come if there's a bunch of people already there. And if there's nobody there, then nobody wants to come. I don't know. I'm for alternative ways of doing things and thinking and showing the overlooked and the askew and the alternate stories, the side quests of history, okay? The NPCs are people too, okay? NPCs are people too, okay? Okay, all you notebook poets, all you diary poets out there. One thing the instructor said was they were excited to see how I could... Well, I asked them if I should have a prompt. And they said, yeah, people do typically have a prompt. And I thought, oh, shit, I don't. And then they said, well, we're excited to see how you lead people through this. Which, to be honest, in my experience doing this kind of stuff, leading an open mic or this, or doing a wedding, any kind of position where, like, you're in a position of authority in front of, like, it's a scary position, right? Public speaking. being in front of 10 people or 20 people or 50 people or 200 people, it can be scary because that force theoretically could turn against you. These people could trample you and mob you and rip you to pieces at any time if you don't please them. If you don't please the mob, they could kill you if they turn against you. Worst case scenario, they could kill you. They could rip you to pieces and rip your head off. And put a fucking bayonet up your ass like Gaddafi. That's pretty much the worst case scenario. What happened to Gaddafi? That's the worst case scenario. You could get bayoneted up the ass to death. That's what you don't want. You're trying to avoid that as a public speaker or like, you know, somebody who's in charge of like a big group of people. But, you know, at the same time, it is almost like flying an airplane or something. It's like if you press the throttle, it goes for like they are listening. And they're you can almost feel that power or something, or like, you know, like that's one of the interesting things about doing the open mic is seeing like people do retain and they do see you and they do hear you. You know, like they remember stuff. They listen. And so you think about what you want to say. Think about what you want to throw out there and think about what you want people to hear and how you want to inspire them and teach them or entertain them or get them thinking. It matters what we say. Yeah, but my sample was by far the worst in the class. Everybody else was like writing real shit. Mine was like, maybe I should take a class from them. I was trying to encourage them to like be more amateur, I guess. Amateur of the sense that you do it for the love of it. Amateur coming from the root, you know, for love or whatever. Whatever the fuck it is. You do it for the love of it. I think that's right. I think that's good to do something for the love of it, you know. If I could just not really have money be a factor in my life and just do the things that I do for the love of them, that's what I would do, you know. And poetry is that, you know. Hosting an open mic is like that, too. I like seeing who's out there, what they're doing, you know. I like encouraging people to do better. I like, you know, just helping add fuel to their rise. And, you know, it's just a great way to see who's out there and who's circulating and put on a show. Have a fun night, you know. So I did get my health insurance. I do have health insurance, actually. I know I say that, but I have United Healthcare, apparently, Medicaid. It covers dental. I do need to go to a dentist, like, ASAP. It says my Medicaid doesn't kick in till February 1st. So I do have a few days, I guess, until it actually, they want to torture me. But they just want to torture me for a few more days. So I do need to go, like, it's getting pretty bad. So that's probably going to happen next week. It's my birthday a week from Saturday. So I'm 39 a week from Saturday. You know, I don't mind becoming a teacher sort of in middle age. You know, maybe it's something that a young person shouldn't do, to be honest. I'm not frustrated. The only thing I'm frustrated with the way that I lived my young life, I guess, is I wish I would have traveled more. You know, I wish more of my life I wish I would have figured out reading poetry in front of people way sooner. You know, I wish I would have been doing poetry reading since I was like since I was 18. I wish I had been doing that. You know, I wish I would have figured that out a lot sooner. And I wish I had a life where I had been sort of traveling and doing that when I was younger. You know, if I could have done that all through my 20s, and I didn't really start to do that until I was 30, basically. At least not like hitting it. 29, I would say. 28, 29. And I still haven't really traveled like I would like to. That's, I thought I would become successful and I would get to go on tour and shit like that. And that's still kind of the goal, right? The goal is still to get famous through going viral and being a mega influencer on YouTube and on the internet. And then they bring you everywhere to perform your magic. So that is the goal, I wish it would have happened 10 years ago, but I don't know. I'm happy with definitely the last 10 years of my life, and I don't, it would be nice. I definitely feel like I have been a teacher, even when I worked in restaurants, I always trained fucking people. I always trained the new bussers. I trained new waiters. Um, and at the Slooge, that was basically kind of a teaching. When I started doing video and when I started doing the Slooge thing, that was like, I was 30 years old, so I was sort of old enough that now there were people that were 22, 23, 24, a little bit younger than me that, I had seen a little bit of adulthood, and so you feel like the hope is you can help them avoid the pitfalls that you fell into or something, and just sort of get on the right track earlier. It felt like it probably took me a long time to get on the right track, even though I was doing stuff, my whole life, kind of. Oh man, all right. Well, I gotta get off here because I gotta eat. And thank you for watching. Who knows what's next? I mean, like I said, my birthday. I'm gonna turn 39. Yeah, I posted that Clifford video. I got more views of that than anything. I was watching, Ashley sent me that incredible video of the Clifford recorder. That's one of the most incredible parts about Clifford is he plays that little recorder. How fucked up is that? And so, it got me kind of, on the Clifford wormhole. So I started, YouTubing Clifford stuff. And there's this clip of Martin Short talking about looking back on Clifford. Because now it's sort of like acknowledged as like a cult classic. Over the years, I mean, they've showed it so many fucking times on cable. It's just one of those things that everybody has seen it at this point, Or a lot of people who were never meant to see Clifford have seen it by the grace of God. And it is a masterpiece. It's a master class. Grodin and Martin Short. And so, but it's an acquired taste, and it's kind of, it's very distinct in film history. And so Martin Short is talking about Clifford, and he's like, I travel a lot, doing shows and stuff, and so I'm in airports, and I'm always getting people coming up to me about this or that, and invariably you can pretty much guess what they're gonna, compliment you on or bring up. And so certain type of people might bring up Father of the Bride, certain people might bring up Three Amigos, but if you see kind of a stoner in an airport, stoner who didn't really study that much in college, and now he looks like he's kind of about 38, invariably they're going to mention Clifford. And I felt so, when he said 38, first of all, he said stoner, which is super specific. I didn't know Clifford fans were exclusively stoners. I mean, my mom's not a stoner. She loves Clifford. She's not a 38-year-old stoner. Jack loves Clifford. He's not a 30-year-old. So what is it about a 38-year-old stoner who didn't, and I wouldn't say that I didn't study in college. I definitely did well in college. I was like cum laude. I was like summa cum laude. I had more than I think I had like a 3.7 or something. I may have even had higher than that. I had a good GPA in college. And I definitely studied in college. I didn't like flunk in college, It wasn't like high school. I liked college because they were respectful to you. You got to choose a certain amount of hours a week. You get to learn something you care about. I love being in the wooden desks and shit. The old English building, it's beautiful. I would spend the rest of my life as a professor easily and be happy. No question. Um, because it's like show business. It's like stand-up comedy, basically, right? I mean, same thing. You get in front of people and talk at them for, a couple hours. It's like a Netflix special every 3 times a week. I get to do 2 hours at 10 a.m. I get to do 2 hours at 4. It's great. I got 40 kids in front of me. If I'm doing a lecture, I got 200 kids. Bam. That's a good crowd. It's hard to get that people to come out into a bar. Get that many people. Why did I start talking about this? Ohio State. Oh, how I graduated. Oh yeah, Clifford. But I will say that it's those powers of observation and that just like surgical precision. I mean, did Martin Short not just cut to the quick? How did he know? 38. How did he know? I guess it makes sense. That film came out in like 94, I think, so I would have been 9. So that means I would have grown up with it, so, that's about right. He's not wrong. He's dead nuts. He's dead on. Yeah, so watch Clifford, everybody. Is the moral of the story. Good night.